The emergency beacon cut through the void like a scream in the darkness. Its desperate signal reached across 7 star systems before finding its target, a massive structure floating in the cold emptiness between galaxies. The station looked dead from the outside, its hull scarred by countless meteor impacts and darkened by centuries of cosmic dust. No lights flickered in its windows. No energy signatures pulsed from its core. To any passing ship, it would seem like another piece of ancient wreckage drifting through space. But deep within the station's heart, something stirred. Captain Zara Chun of the merchant vessel Starbound pressed her palm against the communication console, her dark eyes reflecting the amber glow of the distress signal. Around her, the bridge hummed with nervous energy as her mixed-species crew worked frantically at their stations. The Corvin pilot's forearms moved in precise patterns across his navigation controls, while the Thraxian engineer's crystalline form sparkled as she channeled power to the engines. "Captain, we're receiving multiple distress calls," reported Lieutenant Torres, his human fingers dancing across the sensor array. "The vegan colony on Kepler 442b is under attack. The Zalani outpost at Wolf 359 has gone dark, and there are reports of unknown ships advancing on the Tau Ceti system." Zara's jaw tightened. The peace that had lasted for 300 years was crumbling. The galaxy had grown comfortable with the idea that the Great Wars were over, that the ancient weapons of mass destruction had been safely sealed away. The younger species had built their civilizations on the foundation of that peace, never imagining they might need to defend it. "What about Earth?" she asked, though she dreaded the answer. "No response from Earth Command," Torres replied, his voice hollow. "The entire Sol system has been blocked by some kind of interference field. We can't get through." The Corvin pilot, Vex, turned his elongated head toward the captain. "The attack pattern suggests coordination. This isn't random raiding. Someone is systematically targeting every major population center in our sector." Through the main viewport, stars wheeled slowly as the Starbound adjusted course toward the nearest safe harbor. But Zara knew there were no safe harbors anymore. The unknown enemy had struck with precision and overwhelming force, suggesting they had been watching and planning for years, perhaps decades. Dr. Maya Okafor, the ship's xenobiologist and historian, emerged from the research lab with a thick datapad in her hands. Her usually calm demeanor was shattered, replaced by something approaching panic. "Captain, I've been analyzing the attack patterns and ship designs from the sensor logs. I think I know who we're dealing with." "Tell me," Zara said grimly. "The Void Reapers. They're a nomadic species that was supposedly extinct. According to the historical records, they consumed entire star systems during the First Galactic War, 800 years ago. Their technology is based on entropy manipulation. They literally drain the life and energy from everything they encounter." The bridge fell silent except for the soft hum of life support systems. Even the normally chattering Thraxian engineer had gone quiet, her crystalline form dimming with fear. "How were they stopped before?" Zara asked. Dr. Okafor's hands trembled as she accessed another file. "They weren't stopped by conventional means. According to these records, something called the Silent Sentinels dealt with them. But the details are classified at levels I don't have access to. All I know is that after the Sentinels intervened, the Void Reapers vanished, and the galaxy entered an age of peace. Then, we need to find these Silent Sentinels," Zara declared. "Where are they?" "That's the problem, Captain. The records suggest they went into some kind of hibernation after the war. Nobody knows where they are, or even if they still exist. Some historians believe they were just a myth created to explain the Reapers' sudden disappearance." A new alarm sounded, and Lieutenant Torres's face went pale. "Captain, we're picking up massive energy signatures on long-range sensors. Something big is coming this way, multiple contacts, moving faster than anything in our databases." On the main screen, space itself seemed to ripple as dark shapes emerged from hyperspace. The Void Reaper ships were nightmares given form, organic-looking vessels that pulsed with sickly bioluminescence. They moved with predatory grace, their hulls absorbing light rather than reflecting it. As Zara watched, one of the ships extended tendril-like appendages toward a nearby asteroid. Within seconds, the rock crumbled to dust, its materials somehow absorbed into the alien vessel's hull. "How long until they reach us?" Zara asked, her voice steady despite the terror growing in her chest. 18 minutes at current speed, Vex replied. But, Captain, our engines can't outrun them. Those ships are generating gravitational fields that bend space-time itself. Dr. Okafor suddenly gasped, her eyes widening as she stared at her datapad. Captain, I found something. There's a reference to an emergency protocol, something called the Deep Sleep Awakening. According to this fragment, in the event of a Void Reaper incursion, any ship or station is authorized to transmit a specific signal on an ancient frequency. What kind of signal? Zara demanded. A wake-up call. The coordinates point to a location in the Perseus arm, but the transmission has to be sent from here, right now, before we're destroyed. The deck shuddered as the Void Reaper's gravitational weapons began to affect the Starbound. Warning lights flashed across the bridge as the hull groaned under impossible stresses. Do it, Zara ordered. Send the signal. Dr. Okafor's fingers flew across her console, inputting the ancient codes. The ship's communication array swiveled to point toward the designated coordinates, and a pulse of energy shot out into the void. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, the signal began to repeat itself, growing stronger with each transmission. Signal away, Captain, Dr. Okafor reported. But, I don't know if. The transmission cut off as the lead Void Reaper ship fired. A beam of absolute darkness struck the Starbound's port side, and Zara watched in horror as the hull began to dissolve. The metal didn't melt or explode. It simply ceased to exist, leaving behind empty space where solid matter had been moments before. All hands, abandon ship, Zara shouted into the intercom. This is not a drill. But, even as she gave the order, she knew it was futile. The escape pods would be consumed just as easily as the ship itself. The Void Reapers had found them, and now they would share the fate of countless civilizations before them. Yet somewhere in the distant Perseus arm, the signal had found its target. Deep within a structure that had drifted silently through space for 3 centuries, ancient systems began to stir. Power flowed through circuits that had lain dormant since the end of the First Galactic War. In chambers filled with stasis pods, monitoring equipment detected the awakening signal and began the revival process. The silent sentinels were waking up. Admiral Sarah Kane was the first to open her eyes, though consciousness came slowly after 300 years of induced hibernation. The stasis pod's medical systems worked to restore her body's functions while her mind struggled to process where she was and why she was awakening. Gradually, memories returned. The end of the war, the decision to enter deep sleep, the promise to return if humanity was ever threatened again. Around her, other pods were opening. The soft hiss of atmosphere equalizing filled the vast chamber as 200 of humanity's greatest warriors returned to life. These weren't ordinary soldiers. They were the survivors of humanity's darkest hour, veterans of battles that had raged across multiple galaxies. Each one had been carefully selected for their skills, their determination, and their absolute refusal to surrender in the face of impossible odds. Colonel Marcus Reed stretched his muscular frame as he stepped from his pod, his augmented systems running diagnostics on his enhanced physiology. Beside him, Commander Lisa Park's cybernetic eye flickered to life, immediately scanning the awakening chamber for threats. Throughout the room, the elite of humanity's military forces were returning to consciousness, their bodies preserved at peak condition by the advanced stasis technology. Status report. Admiral Kane commanded, her voice carrying the authority that had led humanity through its greatest trials. The station's AI, codenamed Aegis, materialized as a holographic figure, a tall, imposing presence with features that seemed to shift between human and something more advanced. Admiral, you have been in stasis for 312 years. I have awakened you in response to an emergency beacon indicating Void Reaper activity in the Orion Arm. Kane's blood ran cold. The Void Reapers, humanity's most terrifying enemy, were supposed to have been driven into the void beyond the galactic rim. If they had returned, it meant the peace that humanity had died to protect was ending. Show me the current situation, she ordered. The chamber's walls became transparent displays showing star maps dotted with red warning markers. Entire systems were marked as compromised or destroyed. The green indicators representing allied civilizations were winking out one by one as the Reapers advanced. The attack began 72 hours ago, Aegis reported. The Reapers have destroyed or occupied 47 systems so far. Casualty estimates suggest over 2 billion sapient beings have been consumed. Commander Parks studied the tactical display with the eye of a seasoned strategist. They're using the same expansion pattern as before, hitting the most populated systems first to maximize their energy absorption. But this time they seem more organized, more focused. What's the status of Earth? Kane asked, though she feared the answer. Unknown, Admiral. The Sol system appears to be cut off by some form of interference barrier. No signals have been received from Earth Command in 60 hours. Kane closed her eyes for a moment, feeling the weight of command settling on her shoulders once again. When she opened them, her expression was granite hard with determination. Then, we do what we were trained to do. We protect humanity and its allies, no matter the cost. She turned to address her awakening forces. Throughout the chamber, men and women who had sacrificed everything to stop the Reapers before were checking their equipment and preparing for battle once more. Some had cybernetic enhancements that gleamed in the dim light. Others bore the scars of ancient battles. All of them carried weapons and knowledge that the rest of the galaxy had forgotten existed. Warriors of humanity. Kane's voice echoed through the chamber. We slept believing our war was over. We wake to find it has only just begun again. The enemy we thought we had defeated has returned to threaten everything we fought to protect. Colonel Reed hefted a weapon that looked like it belonged in a museum, until its power cells activated with a deep, thrumming whine. What are our orders, Admiral? We do what the galaxy has forgotten how to do, Kane replied, her eyes reflecting the fire that had made humanity's warriors legendary throughout the cosmos. We fight a war to the knife, without quarter, without mercy, and without retreat. The Void Reapers think the galaxy has grown soft during our absence. They're about to learn that humanity's wrath only grows stronger in the darkness. The station around them began to transform as dormant systems came online. Weapon batteries emerged from hidden compartments. Fighter bays opened like the jaws of ancient predators. The manufacturing facilities that had produced humanity's most devastating weapons began to hum with renewed purpose. Humanity's titans of war were awakening, and the galaxy would tremble at their approach. The first thing Admiral Kane noticed as she made her way to the command center was the silence. After 3 centuries of dormancy, the massive station was slowly coming to life, but it moved with the quiet efficiency that had made human engineering legendary. Unlike the chattering, buzzing technology of the younger species, human systems operated with deadly purpose and minimal fanfare. Commander Lisa Park fell into step beside her, her cybernetic eye constantly scanning their surroundings and updating tactical information directly to her enhanced brain. Admiral, Aegis has briefed me on the station's current capabilities. We're at 70% of full operational status and rising. How long until we're combat ready? Kane asked as they passed through corridors lined with stasis chambers containing humanity's finest equipment and weapons. 6 hours for basic systems. 18 for full war configuration. Kane shook her head. We don't have 18 hours. Show me what we can deploy immediately. They entered the command center, a sphere-shaped chamber in the heart of the station where holographic displays showed the tactical situation across multiple galaxies. The sight that greeted them was worse than Kane had imagined. The red markers indicating Void Reaper activity had spread like a plague across the star maps. Entire sectors that had been thriving centers of galactic civilization just days ago were now marked as consumed or under attack. Colonel Marcus Reed was already at the weapons control station, his enhanced reflexes allowing him to process the complex targeting data faster than any organic mind. Admiral, we've got good news and bad news. The good news is that our primary weapon systems are online and ready to fire. The bad news is that the Reapers have evolved. Show me, Kane ordered. The main display shifted to show detailed scans of Void Reaper vessels. Where once they had been purely organic constructs that consumed matter and energy, these new ships showed signs of technological enhancement. Metallic armor plating protected their vital systems, and energy weapons that hadn't existed during the First Galactic War bristled from their hulls. They've been busy during our sleep, Park observed grimly. These aren't the same creatures we fought 3 centuries ago. Aegis materialized beside them, its holographic form more solid-looking than before as more power flowed to its systems. Analysis of intercepted Reaper communications suggests they have been hiding in the void between galaxies, not merely surviving, but actively evolving. They appear to have assimilated technology from dozens of extinct species. Kane studied the tactical data with the eye of someone who had spent decades fighting seemingly impossible wars. Have they adapted to our weapons? Unknown, Admiral. However, it would be prudent to assume they have developed countermeasures against our known capabilities. Then, we'll have to show them some capabilities they don't know about. Kane turned to Reed. Status of Project Prometheus? Reed's scarred face broke into a grim smile. All fabrication systems are online, Admiral. We can begin production immediately. Do it. And initialize the Titan protocols. Park's enhanced eye whirred as she processed this information. Admiral, are you certain? The Titans weren't tested under combat conditions when we went into stasis. The galaxy is dying, Commander. This is exactly the time for untested weapons. Kane walked to the central command station and placed her hand on the biometric scanner. Aegis, transfer all command authorization to my personal codes. Activate War Protocol Omega. Confirmed, Admiral. War Protocol Omega is now active. All safety restrictions have been lifted. Full military production authorized. Throughout the station, changes began to occur that would have terrified the peaceful civilizations of the current galaxy. Manufacturing bays that had been designed to produce exploration equipment retooled themselves to create weapons of unprecedented destructive power. Automated systems began assembling not just ships and weapons, but entirely new classes of warfare technology that pushed the boundaries of physics itself. In the fighter bay, sleek craft that looked more like predatory animals than traditional spacecraft began to emerge from the production lines. These weren't the clumsy, multi-purpose vessels used by the galactic peacekeeping forces. They were pure instruments of war, designed with a single purpose: to kill Void Reapers as efficiently as possible. Admiral, called Lieutenant Sarah Cruz from the communications station. I'm receiving fragmentary transmissions from across the galaxy. The picture isn't good. Give me the worst of it first. The Andromedan Trade Federation has fallen completely. All 7 core worlds consumed within 12 hours. The Centauri Republic managed to evacuate 2 of their planets before the Reapers arrived, but the rest of their territory is gone. The Vegan Confederacy is requesting immediate assistance. They estimate they have less than 48 hours before their defensive lines collapse. Kane absorbed this information without visible reaction, though Park could see the fury building behind her eyes. The Admiral had always taken the protection of humanity's allies personally, and the thought of billions of innocent beings consumed by the Reapers was stoking the same righteous anger that had made her such a formidable commander during the First Galactic War. What about our old friends in the Corvan Empire and the Thraxian Assembly? The Corvans are fighting a running retreat from their outer colonies. Their four-armed physiology gives them some advantages in ship-to-ship combat, but their weapons aren't designed to penetrate Reaper bioarmor. The Thraxians. Cruz paused, her face grim. The Thraxians activated some kind of planet-killer weapon on their homeworld rather than let it be consumed. They took out a Reaper hive ship in the process, but the cost. They chose honor over slavery, Kane said quietly. We'll make sure their sacrifice means something. Colonel Reed looked up from his weapons console. Admiral, first batch of Prometheus missiles is ready for deployment. We've got 10 Mark 7 planet crackers and 50 Mark 3 ship killers. The production line will be running continuously from now on. Good. But we're going to need more than missiles to win this war. Kane turned to the tactical display and began marking specific points in space. Aegis, show me the location of all remaining Guardian stations. Admiral, of the 12 Guardian stations constructed during the First Galactic War, 7 remain operational. However, their crews have been dead for over 2 centuries. The stations are running on automatic systems only. Then, we wake them up. Those stations were designed to anchor defensive lines against Reaper swarms. If we can reactivate them and link them to our command network, we can create strong points throughout the galaxy. Park nodded approvingly. A war of attrition. Force the Reapers to fight for every system while we rebuild our strength. Exactly. But first, we need to show them that humanity is back in the fight. Kane walked to the window overlooking the station's primary docking bay, where something massive was taking shape. How long until the first Titan is ready for deployment? The Titan Aegis will be operational within 4 hours, Aegis reported. However, I must remind you that the psychological profile of a Titan-class warrior may not be compatible with the current galactic political situation. Kane smiled for the first time since awakening. Aegis, the current galactic political situation is everyone dies unless we stop the Reapers. I think a Titan warrior can adapt to that reality. In the depths of the station, in a chamber that had been sealed since the end of the First Galactic War, something stirred. Captain David Chen had been humanity's first volunteer for the Titan Enhancement Program, a process that merged human consciousness with the most advanced AI systems humanity had ever created. The result was a warrior who thought faster than any organic mind and fought with the calculated precision of a machine, while retaining the creative unpredictability that made humans such dangerous opponents. As his systems came online, Chen's enhanced awareness immediately accessed the station's databases and absorbed the current tactical situation. In the space of 30 seconds, he processed more information about the Void Reaper incursion than most organic beings could handle in a lifetime. His response was typically direct. "Time for payback," he said, his voice carrying harmonics that no purely human throat could produce. Back in the command center, Kane was coordinating the awakening process for Guardian stations across the galaxy. Each station would need to be approached carefully. Their automatic defenses were designed to destroy anything that came too close without proper authorization codes. But, once reactivated, they would provide the backbone for humanity's resistance network. "Admiral, I'm detecting Void Reaper movement in the Kepler system," Cruz reported. "Looks like they're massing for a major offensive. Target appears to be the refugee fleet that escaped from Centauri Prime." Kane's jaw tightened. The refugee fleet contained over 2 million civilians, families who had lost their homes when the Reapers consumed their worlds. They were defenseless, relying on a handful of outdated escort ships for protection. How long until they reach the refugees? 8 hours at current speed. And how long until our first combat units are ready? Reed checked his displays. The Prometheus missiles are ready now. First squadron of Wraith fighters will be combat ready in 3 hours. That's cutting it close, Park observed. If we deploy immediately, we might be able to intercept the Reapers before they reach the refugee fleet. Kane nodded. "Do it. Launch everything we have." And, "Commander." "Yes, Admiral." "Send a message to the refugee fleet. Tell them humanity remembers its debts. And, we're coming to collect what the Reapers owe us." The first Prometheus missile launched from the station with a flash of exotic matter that bent space. Unlike conventional weapons, it didn't travel through normal space, but instead took shortcuts through dimensional folds that had been mapped during humanity's darkest scientific experiments. It would reach its target in hours rather than days, carrying enough destructive force to crack a planet's crust. Behind it, sleek fighter craft emerged from the station's bays like deadly insects. Their pilots weren't human anymore. They were uploaded consciousnesses of humanity's greatest aces, freed from the limitations of organic reflexes and fear. They thought at light speed and felt no doubt or hesitation. They existed for only one purpose: to kill Void Reapers with ruthless efficiency. But the greatest weapon humanity was preparing to unleash wasn't visible on any scanner. Deep in the station's enhanced training facilities, other awakening warriors were learning that the galaxy they had sworn to protect had changed dramatically during their sleep. The peaceful species they had once fought alongside had grown soft and complacent. The military technologies they had developed were designed for policing actions against pirates and smugglers, not total war against an extinction-level threat. It was time for the galaxy to remember why humanity had been both feared and respected during the First Galactic War. Not because humans were the strongest or the smartest or the most technologically advanced, but because when faced with annihilation, they refused to accept defeat. When the choice came down to victory or death, humanity chose both. The Void Reapers had made a critical error. They had attacked while thinking humanity was still sleeping. Now they would discover that humanity's dreams had been filled with nightmares of revenge. and those nightmares were about to become reality. The Prometheus missile struck the lead Void Reaper Hive ship exactly 4 hours and 17 minutes after launch. The alien vessel, which had been gliding through space with predatory confidence toward the helpless refugee fleet, simply vanished in a sphere of annihilating energy that briefly outshone nearby stars. Admiral Kane watched the detonation from the command center, her expression grimly satisfied. Direct hit. Target destroyed. But her satisfaction was short-lived. On the tactical display, the remaining Reaper ships didn't scatter or retreat as she had hoped. Instead, they accelerated toward the refugees with increased urgency, their biohulls pulsing with angry bioluminescence. They're adapting faster than expected, Commander Park observed. The lead ship absorbed most of the blast, but the others are already adjusting their formation to minimize damage from similar attacks. Colonel Reed studied the weapon telemetry data scrolling across his screens. The Prometheus warhead performed exactly as designed, but these Reapers have some kind of distributed consciousness system. When one ship dies, the others immediately incorporate its final sensory data. Then, we'll have to teach them some lessons they won't survive to share, Kane said coldly. Launch the second wave. In space, the sleek Wraith fighters were already engaging the Reaper swarm. Unlike the lumbering military vessels used by the galaxy's peacekeeping forces, these craft moved like living things, rolling, diving, and weaving through three-dimensional space in patterns that would have liquefied organic pilots. Their weapons weren't the gentle ion cannons designed for disabling pirate vessels, but focused plasma streams that could melt through titanium in seconds. Fighter Squadron Leader Phoenix, formerly Captain Maria Santos before her consciousness had been uploaded to the Wraith network, led her pilots into the heart of the Reaper formation with the cold precision of a scalpel. Her enhanced awareness processed trajectory calculations at light speed, while her fellow pilots communicated through direct data transfer rather than voice. Primary targets are the bioconduits along their ventral sections. Phoenix transmitted to her squadron. Sever those, and their distributed consciousness network goes down. Secondary targets are the energy absorption organs, the pulsing sacs near their forward sections. The Wraith fighters struck like a school of predatory fish, each one targeting specific vulnerabilities that had been identified during humanity's previous war with the Reapers. Their weapons weren't designed for prolonged combat. They were surgical instruments meant to inflict maximum damage in minimum time. One Reaper ship tried to catch a Wraith fighter with its grasping tentacles, but the human pilot's enhanced reflexes allowed her to slip through the alien's grasp and deliver a concentrated plasma burst directly into its neural cluster. The alien vessel convulsed and went dark, its bioluminescent organs flickering out like dying stars. But the Reapers were learning. As the fighters pressed their attack, the remaining alien ships began coordinating their defensive fire. Streams of entropy-based energy reached out like dark fingers, trying to drain the life from the attacking humans. One Wraith fighter got caught in a crossfire and simply ceased to exist, its sophisticated technology unable to resist the fundamental forces that the Reapers commanded. Phoenix, to command, Squadron Leader Santos transmitted back to the Guardian Station. We've eliminated 3 targets, but they're adapting their countermeasures. Request permission to implement Kamikaze Protocol. Admiral Kane's face went pale. The Kamikaze Protocol was exactly what it sounded like. The uploaded pilots would ram their fighters into Reaper ships, using the craft's exotic matter cores as improvised weapons. It was devastatingly effective, but it meant the permanent death of some of humanity's greatest warrior spirits. Negative, Phoenix. Break off and return to base. We need those pilots for the long war ahead. Admiral, with respect, those refugees won't survive long enough to see the long war. We can punch a hole through their formation and give the civilians time to escape to the Tau Ceti system. Kane looked at the tactical display, where the refugee ships were desperately trying to change course away from the approaching Reapers. Over 2 million civilians, humans, Corvins, Thraxians, and dozens of other species, all depending on her decision. In the old days, before the peace, such choices had been easier. The galaxy had understood that war required sacrifice. Permission granted, Phoenix. Make it count. Understood, Command. It's been an honor serving with humanity's finest. The remaining Wraith fighters accelerated toward the Reaper formation, their exotic matter cores overloading in carefully controlled cascades. The uploaded pilots felt no fear as they approached their targets. Death was simply another tactical consideration, and they had calculated that their sacrifice would save more lives than it cost. The explosions that followed were visible from 7 light-years away. 5 Reaper ships vanished in the coordinated attack, their biohulls unable to withstand the concentrated release of humanity's most advanced technology. The surviving alien vessels were thrown off course, giving the refugee fleet precious time to escape toward the safety of the inner systems. But Admiral Kane knew this was only the beginning. The Reapers would learn from this engagement, just as they had learned from the Prometheus missile attack. Next time, they would be prepared for humanity's tactics. Aegis, what's the status of the Guardian Station Awakening Protocol? Admiral, I have successfully established contact with Guardian Stations Bravo, Delta, and Foxtrot. Station Alpha remains unresponsive. Long-range scans suggest it may have suffered critical damage. Stations Charlie and Echo are operational, but report that their automated systems have been fighting off Reaper probing attacks for the past 72 hours. How long until the stations are fully operational? Guardian Station Bravo will be ready for combat operations within 6 hours. The others will require additional time for full system restoration. Kane nodded grimly. 3 functioning Guardian stations would give humanity strong points throughout the galaxy, but it wouldn't be enough to stop the Reaper advance. They needed something more, a force multiplier that would allow their limited resources to have maximum impact. What's the status of the Titan project? Colonel Reed looked up from his console. Captain Chin's enhancement process is complete. All integration protocols show green. He's ready for field deployment. Send him to Guardian Station Bravo. If the Reapers are probing our defensive positions, they're going to encounter something they've never seen before. In the depths of the station, Captain David Chin finished his final systems check. The Titan enhancement process had been humanity's most ambitious military project, an attempt to create warriors who combined human intuition and creativity with artificial intelligence processing power and machine durability. The result was something that wasn't quite human anymore, but wasn't artificial either. Chin's enhanced consciousness could process tactical information at the speed of light, while his augmented body could survive in environments that would kill ordinary humans. His weapons weren't just tools. They were extensions of his will, controlled by thought rather than manual manipulation. Most importantly, his enhanced mind could adapt to enemy tactics faster than any organic brain or conventional AI. As he prepared to deploy to Guardian Station Bravo, Chin reviewed the tactical data from the recent engagement. The Reapers were definitely more evolved than their ancestors from the First Galactic War. They showed increased coordination, better technology, and adaptive learning capabilities that suggested they had been preparing for this return for centuries. But they still made the same fundamental mistake that had led to their defeat before. They underestimated humanity's capacity for innovation under pressure. The galaxy's peaceful species tended to develop technology slowly and carefully, testing each advancement extensively before implementation. Humans, especially humans at war, threw caution to the wind and pushed the boundaries of the possible. Aegis, Chin said as he boarded his personal transport craft. Show me everything we know about current Reaper capabilities. Captain, analysis suggests they have developed countermeasures for approximately 60% of humanity's known weapons systems. However, their adaptation appears to be based on technology captured during the First Galactic War. They may not be prepared for our more recent innovations. Chin's enhanced mind processed this information in milliseconds. Recent innovations meant the theoretical weapons that had been under development when humanity entered deep sleep. Concepts so dangerous that they had been shelved until the galaxy faced an extinction-level threat. Aegis, authorize access to Project Pandora files. Full technical specifications and manufacturing requirements. Captain, Project Pandora weapons are classified beyond your current authorization level. Aegis, check my Titan enhancement credentials. Full battlefield authority. There was a pause that lasted exactly 0.003 seconds, an eternity for an AI. Authorization confirmed. Captain Shun, I must advise you that Project Pandora weapons violate several galactic treaties and may cause permanent damage to local spacetime. Chen's augmented features formed what might have been a smile. Aegis, the Reapers are violating the most important treaty of all, the one that says sapient beings get to continue existing. I think we can overlook some paperwork. As Chen's ship streaked toward Guardian Station Bravo, Admiral Kane was receiving increasingly desperate reports from across the galaxy. The Corvan Empire had lost 3 more core worlds. The remaining Thraxian colonies were reporting massive refugee movements as their outer territories fell to Reaper advanced scouts. Even worse, the interference field around Earth's solar system was growing stronger, suggesting that whatever was happening there was escalating. Admiral, Commander Park said quietly, we need to consider the possibility that Earth has already fallen. Kane's jaw tightened. Earth was more than just humanity's homeworld. It was the symbolic heart of the Galactic Alliance. If the Reapers had consumed humanity's birthplace, the psychological impact on allied species would be devastating. We proceed under the assumption that Earth is holding out, Kane said firmly. Until we have proof otherwise, we continue to believe that humanity's home guard is fighting the good fight. But, privately, she was already making contingency plans. If Earth had fallen, then humanity's surviving population was scattered across dozens of colony worlds, most of which had limited defensive capabilities. The Guardian Station network and the deep space facilities would become humanity's last hope for survival. Aegis, begin implementation of Operation Phoenix Protocol. Admiral, Operation Phoenix Protocol requires authorization from Earth Command. Aegis, I am Earth Command until proven otherwise. Begin implementation immediately. Throughout the galaxy, hidden transmitters began broadcasting on frequencies that had been reserved for humanity's darkest hour. On colony worlds, in deep space installations, and aboard merchant vessels, humans began receiving coded messages that activated protocols that had been dormant for 3 centuries. The message was simple. Earth was in danger, the Reapers had returned, and every human in the galaxy was now part of the war effort. Civilian ships were to report to designated rally points for conversion to military use. Scientists were to abandon their current projects and focus on weapons development. Every human with military training was to consider themselves reactivated for emergency service. Most importantly, the Phoenix Protocol authorized the use of any and all weapons necessary to ensure humanity's survival. The peaceful galaxy that had existed during humanity's sleep was about to remember why their ancestors had been grateful for human protection. Captain Chen's ship reached Guardian Station Bravo just as the first Reaper probe ships arrived in the system. The automated defensive systems immediately engaged the alien vessels, but Chen could see that the station's conventional weapons were having limited effect against the evolved Reaper bioarmor. Time for a field test of humanity's newest innovations. Guardian Station Bravo hung in space like a metallic spider, its massive arms bristling with weapons that had been designed to anchor humanity's defensive lines during the First Galactic War. But, as Captain David Chun watched from his approaching transport, he could see that the station's conventional armaments were barely scratching the Reaper probe ships that danced around it like malevolent shadows. The aliens had learned well during their exile. Their biohulls had been reinforced with metallic plating that deflected energy weapons, while their organic components absorbed kinetic impacts and converted the energy to fuel their own systems. The Guardian Station's automated defenses were fighting a losing battle against an enemy that grew stronger with every hit it took. Chen's enhanced consciousness processed the tactical situation in microseconds. The Reaper probes weren't trying to destroy the station. They were testing its defenses, gathering data that would be transmitted back to the main Reaper fleet for analysis. Within hours, the aliens would know exactly how to neutralize humanity's Guardian stations. Aegis, Chun commanded as his transport docked with the station. Transfer full technical specifications for Project Pandora weapons to my personal storage matrix. I'm going to need some new toys. Captain, I must reiterate that Project Pandora weapons are classified as reality endangering. Their use could cause permanent damage to local space-time geometry. Chen's augmented features showed no emotion as he stepped onto the station's command deck. The chamber was filled with holographic displays showing the ongoing battle, while automated systems struggled to coordinate defensive fire against targets that seemed to ignore the laws of physics. Aegis, what's the casualty count in this sector since the Reaper incursion began? Current estimates suggest 2.7 billion sapient beings have been consumed or killed. And what are the projected casualties if the Reapers succeed in their expansion? Conservative estimates place total galactic casualties at 847 billion sentient beings. Moderate estimates suggest complete extinction of all sapient life within 18 months. Chen nodded grimly. I think we can risk some space-time damage to prevent the complete annihilation of galactic civilization. Initialize Project Pandora manufacturing protocols. Throughout the station, dormant fabrication bays began transforming themselves into production facilities for weapons that had been theoretical concepts when humanity entered deep sleep. The entropy reversal cannon, which could literally undo the atomic bonds holding matter together. The causality violation missile, which could strike its target before it was actually fired. The probability collapse grenade, which forced quantum uncertainties to resolve in humanity's favor. These weren't just weapons. They were fundamental violations of how the universe was supposed to work, created by human scientists who had decided that the laws of physics were more like guidelines when the survival of sentient life was at stake. The first weapon to come online was something Chun had personally helped design during the final years of the First Galactic War. The reality anchor was a device that could lock local space-time into a specific configuration, preventing the kind of exotic manipulations that the Reapers used to bend space around their ships. First target acquired, Chen announced as his enhanced targeting systems locked onto the nearest Reaper probe. Deploying reality anchor. The weapon fired with no visible effect. No beam of light, no missile trail, nothing that conventional sensors could detect. But, suddenly, the Reaper ship that had been dancing through space with impossible grace found itself subject to normal physics. Its biohull stopped absorbing impacts. Its organic weapons could no longer bend energy around their targets. For the first time in the engagement, it was vulnerable. The Guardian Station's conventional weapons opened fire with renewed effectiveness. Plasma cannons that had been ineffective against the Reaper's exotic defenses now tore through its hull like tissue paper. Within seconds, the alien ship was reduced to drifting debris. But Chen's enhanced awareness was already processing the reaction of the other Reaper probes. Instead of fleeing or pressing their attack, they were transmitting vast amounts of data back to their fleet. They had encountered something new, and they were recording every detail for analysis. They're learning too fast, Chen muttered to himself. Time for some asymmetric warfare. The second Project Pandora weapon to come online was the Quantum Uncertainty Generator, a device that made probability itself into a weapon. Instead of simply destroying enemy ships, it made their destruction inevitable by collapsing quantum possibilities in humanity's favor. Chen targeted the second Reaper probe and fired. For a moment, nothing seemed to happen. Then, the alien ship simply ceased to exist, not destroyed in an explosion, but erased from reality as if it had never been there. The quantum field around it had been manipulated to make its continued existence statistically impossible. The remaining Reaper probes finally showed something approaching caution. They began retreating toward the edge of the system, but Chen wasn't about to let them escape with intelligence about humanity's new weapons. Aegis, deploy causality violation missiles. Target all remaining hostiles. Captain, causality weapons require authorization from Aegis. I am authorizing the use of any weapon necessary to prevent enemy intelligence from reaching their fleet. That's a direct order under war emergency protocols. The causality violation missiles launched from the station's weapons bays and immediately disappeared from normal space-time. They traveled backward through the causal stream, arriving at their targets moments before they were actually fired. The remaining Reaper probes exploded in perfect synchronization, destroyed by weapons that technically hadn't been launched yet. Chen allowed himself a moment of satisfaction before his enhanced awareness detected something troubling. The quantum signatures of the weapon's discharge were creating ripple effects in local space-time. The laws of physics were reasserting themselves with interest, and the accumulated paradoxes were building toward a potential reality cascade. Aegis, initiate emergency stabilization protocols. Contain all exotic matter residue, and Normalized local space-time geometry. Stabilization in progress, Captain. However, the quantum echoes from this engagement will be detectable by any Reaper ships with advanced sensor systems. They will know that humanity has developed reality-warping weapons. Chen nodded grimly. The element of surprise was gone, but that had been inevitable. The important thing was that no Reaper probe had escaped to report the specific technical details of humanity's new weapons. The aliens would know that something dangerous was waiting for them, but they wouldn't know exactly what. Back at the primary Guardian station, Admiral Kane was receiving reports from across the galaxy that painted an increasingly desperate picture. The Reaper advance was accelerating, with entire sectors falling faster than the aliens could consume them. It was as if they were no longer interested in the slow process of draining worlds. They wanted territory, and they wanted it quickly. Admiral, Commander Park said grimly, I think they're preparing for a major offensive. All this scattered raiding activity appears to be reconnaissance in force. They're mapping our defensive capabilities and identifying key strategic targets. Kane studied the tactical displays with growing unease. The Reapers weren't behaving like the mindless consumer organisms they had been during the First Galactic War. These attacks showed planning, coordination, and strategic thinking that suggested they had evolved far beyond their original nature. What's their primary target? She asked. Unknown, but based on their movement patterns, they seem to be establishing staging areas in 3 key sectors. If I had to guess, they're planning a 3-pronged assault on the galactic core. The galactic core contained the highest concentration of advanced civilizations in the galaxy. It was also where the Galactic Council maintained its primary installations, and where most of the galaxy's communication networks were coordinated. If the Reapers could seize control of the core, they could effectively cut off the outer systems from each other and defeat them piecemeal. Time until they're ready to launch their main offensive? Based on current force concentration rates, 72 to 96 hours. Kane felt the weight of command pressing down on her shoulders. 72 hours to prepare for a battle that would determine the fate of galactic civilization. The Guardian stations were coming online, but slowly. The Titan warriors were being awakened and equipped, but there were still too few of them. Humanity's weapons technology was advancing rapidly, but the Reapers were adapting just as quickly. Aegis, show me the status of all human military assets. Admiral, current human military strength includes 3 operational Guardian stations, 147 activated Titan warriors, 612 Wraith fighters, and manufacturing capacity for Project Pandora weapons. Additionally, Operation Phoenix Protocol has resulted in the activation of 2.3 million reserve personnel across human space. Kane blinked in surprise. 2.3 million reserves? Admiral, you may have underestimated the extent to which human civilians maintained military training and equipment during the peace. It appears that humanity never entirely believed the war was over. Commander Park smiled grimly. Old habits die hard, Admiral. My grandmother kept a pulse rifle in her closet, just in case, until the day she died. Looks like that paranoia is finally paying off. Where are these reserves concentrating? Primary rally points have been established at New Terra, Kepler Colony, and the Ross 128 system. Additional forces are gathering at 17 secondary locations. However, Admiral, most of these personnel are equipped with civilian-grade weapons and ships. They'll need significant upgrades before they can effectively engage Reaper forces. Kane nodded. Then, we give them upgrades. Aegis, implement Conversion Protocol 7. Every civilian ship that reports for duty gets retrofitted with military-grade systems. Every volunteer gets access to Project Pandora personal weapons. We're not just fighting for survival anymore. We're fighting to prove that the galaxy made the right choice when it trusted humanity to protect it. Admiral, Colonel Reed interrupted from his weapons console. I'm receiving a priority transmission from Captain Chun at Guardian Station Bravo. He's requesting permission to implement something called the Titan Network Protocol. Kane frowned. She didn't recognize that designation. Aegis, what is the Titan Network Protocol? Admiral, the Titan Network Protocol is a theoretical combat enhancement system that would link all Titan-class warriors into a shared consciousness network during battle. It would allow them to coordinate their actions with perfect precision and share tactical information instantaneously. However, the psychological risks to the Titan warriors are considered unacceptable under normal circumstances. What kind of psychological risks? The merging of multiple enhanced consciousnesses could result in the loss of individual identity among the Titan warriors. They might become a collective intelligence rather than individual humans. King considered this for a moment. The Titan warriors were volunteers. They had accepted the enhancement process knowing that it would change them fundamentally. If they were willing to risk their individual identities to give humanity a fighting chance, who was she to deny them that choice? Contact Captain Chun. Tell him he has authorization to implement the Titan Network protocol, but only with volunteers. Any warrior who wants to remain independent can opt out without penalty. Acknowledged, Admiral. As the communication went out to the Titan warriors across human space, Kane couldn't shake the feeling that she was crossing a line that humanity might never be able to uncross. But the galaxy was dying, and desperate times called for desperate measures. In the depths of space, something that had once been Captain David Chun and was now something more began reaching out to his fellow warriors, offering them a choice between individual survival and collective transcendence. The Reapers had evolved beyond their original nature during their exile. It was time for humanity to evolve as well. The Titan Network came online at exactly 0347 Galactic Standard Time, linking the minds of 147 enhanced warriors across human space into a collective consciousness that operated at the speed of light. Captain David Chun felt his individual awareness merge with his fellow Titans, creating something unprecedented in human history, a hive mind that retained the creativity and unpredictability of individual human thought while gaining the coordination and processing power of a supercomputer. Through the network, Chun could see through the eyes of Titan warriors stationed at every human stronghold across the galaxy. He felt their enhanced bodies as extensions of his own, their weapons as additional limbs, their tactical assessments as facets of a single strategic overview. For the first time since the Reaper incursion began, humanity had perfect information about the enemy's movements. And what the network saw was terrifying. The Reapers weren't just massing for a three-pronged assault on the galactic core. They were preparing to implement something far more ambitious, a complete reality restructuring that would remake the galaxy according to their biological imperatives. The probe ships that had been testing humanity's defenses weren't gathering tactical intelligence. They were mapping the fundamental quantum structure of local space-time. Through Titan warrior Zara Singh, stationed at Guardian Station Delta, the network observed massive Reaper construction ships building something that shouldn't have been possible, a device that could alter the basic physical constants that governed how matter and energy behaved. If completed, it would transform the entire galaxy into an environment optimized for Reaper biology, making survival impossible for any other form of life. Admiral Kane. The Titan Network spoke through Chin's enhanced vocal systems, though the voice now carried harmonics from all 147 connected warriors. The situation is worse than we initially assessed. The Reapers aren't trying to conquer the galaxy. They're trying to transform it into something fundamentally different. Admiral Kane felt a chill run down her spine as she processed this information. She had thought the First Galactic War had been about survival. This was about the very nature of reality itself. How long until they complete this device? Current construction rates suggest 36 hours until initial activation. Full transformation of galactic spacetime would take approximately 4 months, but even partial activation would create zones where non-Reaper life cannot exist. Commander Park studied the tactical data flowing from the Titan network with growing alarm. Admiral, if they can alter physical constants, our weapons might not work anymore. Even Project Pandora technology depends on exploiting specific quantum mechanical principles. Kane nodded grimly. Then, we stop them before they can activate it. Aegis, what's our strike capability against the Reaper construction site? Admiral, the construction facility is located in the Void Sector, approximately 17 light-years beyond the galactic rim. It is defended by over 300 Reaper capital ships and multiple layers of exotic matter barriers. Current human forces would be insufficient for a direct assault. What would be sufficient? The Titan network processed this question with inhuman speed, running millions of tactical simulations in the space of seconds. Admiral, successful assault would require the deployment of humanity's ultimate weapons, systems that we classified as galaxy-ending during the First Galactic War. Kane felt her blood run cold. She knew what weapons the network was referring to, theoretical devices that had been developed, but never deployed because their use would fundamentally damage the structure of the galaxy itself. Weapons that would save civilization by potentially destroying the very space-time that civilization existed in. Show me the projections. The command center's displays filled with models showing the cascading effects of deploying humanity's most dangerous weapons. The quantum cascade bomb would destabilize space-time across multiple light years, creating a zone where the laws of physics operated differently. The reality breach torpedo would punch holes in the fabric of the universe itself, allowing access to parallel dimensions where different physical laws applied. The existence engine would grant its operator the ability to retroactively edit events from history, changing cause and effect relationships on a galactic scale. Any one of these weapons would cripple the Reaper construction project. Using all of them would guarantee success. It would also leave the galaxy a fundamentally different place, assuming it survived the deployment at all. Admiral, the Titan network said quietly, there is another option, one that does not require the use of reality-ending weapons. Kane looked up hopefully. Tell me. The Reaper's reality alteration device requires a stable quantum foundation to operate. If that foundation could be destabilized through conventional means, the device would collapse under its own exotic matter load. However, this would require a coordinated strike by all available human forces, including civilian vessels converted for military use. What are the casualty projections? The network paused for exactly 0.003 seconds, an eternity for a collective consciousness operating at light speed. Conservative estimates suggest 90% casualties among attacking forces. The Reaper defenders are too numerous and too well-equipped for conventional tactics to succeed without massive losses. Kane closed her eyes, feeling the weight of command that had never left her even during 3 centuries of sleep. She was being asked to choose between the certain destruction of human military forces and the possible destruction of the galaxy itself. There's a third option, she said quietly. Commander Park looked at her with alarm. Admiral, we wake up the rest of humanity's sleeping weapons. All of them. The command center fell silent except for the hum of life support systems. Everyone present knew what Kane was referring to, the deep storage vaults that contained humanity's most experimental weapons, the ones that had been deemed too dangerous for even theoretical testing. Devices that existed at the intersection of science and madness, created by human minds pushed to their absolute limits by the horror of total war. Admiral, Aegis said carefully, the deep storage weapons were classified as uncontrollable for valid reasons. Some of them are partially sentient. Others exist in violation of causality. A few appear to be powered by tapping into alternate universes where humanity lost the First Galactic War. Are they effective against Reapers? Unknown, Admiral. They were never tested under combat conditions because their creators believed that using them would be worse than losing the war. Kane smiled grimly. Their creators didn't face the complete annihilation of galactic civilization. Open the vaults, Aegis. All of them. Throughout human space, seals that had remained unopened for 3 centuries began to crack. Warning systems that had been designed to prevent accidental activation screamed alerts that were systematically overridden by Admiral Kane's authorization codes. In hidden facilities that existed in pockets of folded space-time, weapons that defied description began to wake up. The temporal paradox generator, which could make an event simultaneously happen and not happen until the universe collapsed from logical contradiction. The anthropic principle cannon, which could force reality to reorganize itself around human survival imperatives. The existential crisis inducer, which could make enemy forces question the fundamental nature of their own existence until they ceased to function. But the most dangerous weapon of all was something called the human spirit amplifier, a device that could take humanity's greatest strength, their refusal to accept defeat, and broadcast it across the galaxy as a form of reality-altering field. Anyone touched by its influence would inherit humanity's stubborn insistence that victory was possible even in the face of impossible odds. As these weapons came online, the galaxy itself began to respond. Space-time started exhibiting behaviors that violated several fundamental laws of physics. Causality loops formed around human installations, making them paradoxically difficult to destroy because their destruction would prevent the cause of their own existence. Probability fields shifted to favor human forces in ways that couldn't be explained by conventional science. The Reapers, meanwhile, had detected the quantum disturbances caused by humanity's awakening arsenal and were accelerating their own construction efforts. Their reality alteration device was operating ahead of schedule, creating pockets of space where their own physics took precedence over the standard model. The galaxy was splitting into regions where different versions of reality operated according to different rules. In human-controlled space, determination and ingenuity could overcome mathematical impossibilities. In Reaper-controlled space, consumption and entropy were the only natural laws. Between them, a war zone where the very nature of existence was being contested through direct combat between incompatible versions of physics. Admiral, the Titan network reported, all human forces are in position. Civilian conversions are complete. Deep storage weapons are online and awaiting orders. Every human in the galaxy is ready to fight. Kane looked at the tactical display showing the massed forces of humanity. 2.3 million civilian volunteers in hastily converted ships, 147 Titan warriors whose individual consciousness had merged into something greater than human, 3 Guardian stations armed with weapons that could crack planets, and arsenal of experimental devices that might destroy the galaxy in order to save it. Open a channel to all human forces, she ordered. Throughout human space, every ship, every station, every human settlement received Admiral Kane's final broadcast, Warriors of Humanity. 300 years ago, we fought a war to protect the galaxy from an enemy that would consume everything we held dear. We won that war, but victory came at such a cost that we chose to sleep rather than celebrate. We wake now to find that the enemy has returned stronger, smarter, and more dangerous than before. They do not merely want to consume the galaxy. They want to remake it in their own image, eliminating the possibility that any other form of life can exist. We could meet them with conventional weapons and accept defeat with honor. We could deploy our ultimate weapons and risk destroying the galaxy to save it. Or we can do what humanity has always done when faced with impossible odds. We can refuse to accept the premise that we cannot win. Today, we fight not just for our own survival, but for the right of consciousness itself to exist in this universe. We fight not because victory is certain, but because defeat is unthinkable. We fight because that is what it means to be human. All ships, all stations, all warriors, advance on the enemy. Show them what 3 centuries of human dreams have built. Show them why the galaxy was right to trust us with its protection. This is Admiral Sarah Kane, Earth Command, ordering the final battle to begin. For humanity, for the galaxy, for the future. Across 17 light-years of space, humanity's forces began their advance toward the Reaper construction site. Behind them, the galaxy held its breath as reality itself prepared for a war that would determine not just who lived and who died, but what it meant to exist in a universe where consciousness had evolved to question its own nature. The Silent Sentinels had awakened, and they were bringing with them the accumulated weight of human history, 3 centuries of innovation, determination, and the unshakable belief that intelligence and courage could overcome any threat, no matter how impossible it might seem. The final battle for the galaxy's soul was about to begin.